Rodgers and Tomlin had a laugh. Urban Meyer's got a dance. The Bills pitched another shutout. The other New York teams ended their drought. And we finally got to see Trey Lance. Welcome to the Mishpo. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to the Week 5 episode of the Mishpo. I've got a different beer than my normal High Life this week. I've got a Natter Days in honor of today, the day that I'm recording this, is me and Bree's 4-year dating anniversary, and in honor of our wedding on this week, Saturday. So, cheers. We do have some business, a little bit. It's been the same business we've been going over for the last couple weeks. Still need a payment from 2 people. $15, Venmo, PayPal, cash, check, Zelle. You could barter. That's it, pretty much. Now we'll move on to the sole trade that we had in this past week. Derek traded Dalton Schultz to State Farm for J.D. McKissick and a 2022 10th round pick. Dalton Schultz and J.D. McKissick both had pretty solid weeks last week. However, Derek did bench McKissick, so State was the only one who reaped the rewards from that. They both but could use some help at the position in which the player they received in the trade was playing. However, I do think that Schultz is more valuable as a tight end than McKissick is as a running back. So there's that. Also, Derek did just get a free 10th round pick out of it. Didn't even have to give up a pick for that. So that's pretty nice come draft time. Overall, I do like this trade a bit more for State, but I think it helps out both teams. I gave Derek a B- and State Farm a B+ on this trade. Moving us on to the game recaps. First up, we've got me versus Abby. This one was pretty close. I had a little bit of hope nearing the end of the 325 games, but that was pretty much squashed the second that the Sunday night game started. Despite me scoring a pretty good amount of points, I took the L here. Abby beat me 142.22 to 124.52. And 64% of people got that one correct. Moving us on to Michael versus Caleb. This one was by far the closest matchup we've had this week and this season so far. Only a difference of 0.06. So you can't really, you can't really get much closer than that. Final score of this one, Caleb continued to that undefeated streak, winning 106.4 to 106.32, and only 27% of people got that one correct. Moving us on to T-Corn versus Derek. This one was not really that close at all. Lower scoring, yes, but not very close. T-Corn got the W on this one, 118.48 to 85.28, and 73% of people got that one correct. Moving us on to the matchup that so far on the season, the least percentage amount of people got the pick correct. This one is one of the higher scoring matchups of the week, and also relatively close, a difference of about 5 points. So very close, but in the end, Fiala was able to get to the better of this one, winning 133.42 to 128.22. And only 9% of people got that one correct. Moving us on to State Farm versus Brian. Also a pretty high-scoring matchup and the highest score of the week. State Farm got the win and a beer, joining his wife as beer winners. 150.82 to 122.22. And 73% of people got that one correct. Moving us on to another not-so-close matchup, probably the biggest deficit of the week. Collin versus Lincoln. Low scoring on one side and average scoring for one of the other sides. Lincoln ended up getting the win here, 118.94 to 68.96. That may be the lowest scoring score of the season so far. So 82% of people got that one correct. Moving us on to the last matchup of the week. This one was also relatively close. A difference of about, I guess not really that close, 21 points or 19 points or whatever. Got a little bit of a surprise victory here. Adam ended up getting the win here, 111.26 to 92.32, and only 27% of people got that one correct. For the week, I went 3-4 for a season-long record of 13-15. The weekly point leader is not State Farm, but it is someone living in his house, Abby. She had 7 on the week, but the point leader for the total season and the average still belong to State with 24 and 6 respectively. So that was last week's matchups. All right. Now we are on to this week's power rankings. Number 14, the only winless team, Brian. You dropped 1 spot from 13 last week after a pretty... You scored well, but, you faced State, and he had the highest points, so that kind of sucked. So, yeah, Brian at 14. Number 13, we've got Collin. You also dropped 1 spot after losing to Lincoln, but, sometimes that just happens. You didn't score very well. So, that's Collin at 13. Number 12, we have Sam also dropping 1 spot from last week, losing to Adam last week. He was the lowest rating team, but he put up a surprising amount of points. So that's, that'll happen. It's fantasy. So that's Sam at 12. Number 11, we've got Adam. You were last place last week, and as I just mentioned, you beat Sam the week prior. So, you're on a win streak, I guess. Moving us on to number 10, we've got Derek. You dropped 6 spots from the week prior. Not a very good showing last week. Only 85 points. So you're always looking to do better, and we'll see if you can do that this upcoming week. So that's Derek at 10. Number 9, we've got Lincoln. You went up 1 spot. You were 10 last week. You beat Collin. And you scored a pretty good amount of points, if I remember correctly. Yeah, about 119. So pretty good. You do face a tough opponent, so we'll see if you can keep it going. Number 8, we've got Michael. Dropped a couple spots from the week prior. After your 2-0 start, you are now 0-2. So you're probably looking to turn that around. Let's hope maybe your turnaround is delayed a bit, but, we'll see how it goes. Moving us on to number 7, I've got myself. That's the 3rd week in a row I've kept myself at 7. So, not the worst spot, but not the best. I'm looking to see if I can get myself a victory this week after suffering a loss to Abby. So, that's me at number 7. Moving us on to number 6, we've got Bruce. You lost a pretty close, high-scoring affair to Fiala last week, dropping 4 spots from number 2 to number 6. I could definitely see a win upcoming for you in this upcoming week. So that's Bruce at 6. Number 5, we've got Alex Fiala. Another one of our plentiful 2-2 teams. Most of the league is 2-2. You jumped 9-5 this week. So up 4 spots after beating Bruce in a matchup I just mentioned. And you're going up against an opponent that if you guys scored the same amount of points, then you would win. So that's Fiala at 5. Number 4, we've got Abby. You jumped up 4 spots from 8 last week after your pretty convincing victory against me. You scored, I think, the 2nd most amount of points on the week, only behind your husband. So he's probably going to rub that in your face a little bit. It'll be very interesting this upcoming week with your matchup. So we'll see how well you can do this upcoming week in your matchup. Moving us on to someone we just mentioned, number 3, we've got State Farm, 3-1, 1 of 2 3-1 teams on the season. You beat Brian last week by scoring the most amount of points. You were number 5, so you jumped up 2 spots, and very similar to what I said about Abby, you do have a very interesting opponent. We'll see how that shakes out. Moving us on to number 2, we've got T-Corn. You were number 2 last week, I believe. That's what it says here on my sheet anyways. That could be wrong. I think Bruce actually was number 2. Yeah, so you're number 3 last week. I don't know. You know what? I don't make the rules. So you're number 3 last week after you beat Derek. But, based off of the scores from last week, it wasn't too hard. You probably wish you would have scored more, but you know what? A win's a win. But you do go up against a pretty tough opponent upcoming this week. Which brings us to number 1, our only undefeated team of the season. We've got Caleb at number 1. Last week you were number 1. If you keep winning, you're probably going to keep at the top right there, Caleb. Beat Michael just barely last week. So thank goodness one of his guys didn't catch the ball once more times. your team will definitely be challenged, I think, this upcoming week. So we'll see how that matchup shapes up for you. So that's Caleb at 1. Alrighty, now let's jump into this week's matchups. First up, I've got myself versus Michael. My key players for myself, for my first one, I have quarterback, because it's either going to be Ryan Tannehill or Trey Lance. Tannehill, because he had a less than stellar performance last week against the Jets, but he's going up against the Jags, who are maybe worse. I don't know. So we'll see if Tannehill can come and have a solid performance. But if it's Trey Lance, depending on Garoppolo's health, he put up 20 points in a half. So if he can do that, that would be pretty cool against a tough Arizona 49ers defense. In my second key player, I have Jonathan Taylor, who did pretty solid last week. Got me about 20 points. Going up against Baltimore, though, this week, and they are a bit tougher on the defensive front than Miami. So we'll see how well JT can do. Moving us on to Michael's key players, we've got Dalvin, Mr. Cook. Not super great last week after his return from injury, but that was against a tough Cleveland defense going up against Detroit this week, who is arguably worse. So we'll see if Dalvin can bounce back. Speaking of players that would like a bounce back, we've got Robert Woods. He did bounce back from week 3 to week 4. So we'll see if week 5 he can keep improving. Scored a season-high points last week of 14.8, being helped out by a touchdown. So we'll see how well Robert Woods can do. My winner for this matchup is, you guessed it, myself. Moving us on to Caleb versus T-Corn. One of the 2, I think, for me, highly anticipated matchups for the week. Key players for Caleb, we've got Mike Williams. He finally came back down to earth. Only scoring 2.1 points last week after being on a tear, being currently the receiver number 5 on the season. We'll see how well he can bounce back against the tough Cleveland defense. The second key player for Caleb is George Kittle, who has a lingering calf and did not perform very well last week going up against the Cardinals this week. So we'll see if he can bounce back and play like the George Kittle of ye old. Moving us on to T-Corn's key players. CeeDee Lamb, first up. Lot of kind of disappointing performances last couple weeks. Going up against the Giants, though, this week, who is probably the easiest defense that he's faced in the last week or two. So we'll see how well CeeDee Lamb can do and see if he can bounce back and give you some CeeDee Lamb-like numbers. Moving us on to someone else who kind of disappointed last week. Travis Kelce, only 6.3 points. That's not very good for Travis Kelce. Going up against Buffalo, where we know we're going to have to throw the ball a lot if we're the Chiefs. So we'll see how well Travis can do against in a rematch for the AFC Championship game last year. For this matchup, I picked my winner as T-Corn. Moving us on to Fiala versus Derek. Key players for Fiala, I just put Detroit running backs because he's got both of them. DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams not scoring very well last week with 8.9 and 6.6 respectively. So we'll see if Jamal and DeAndre can perform well this week against a Minnesota defense that has been kind of not great this season but is improving a bit. So we'll see how well those two can do. And then a guy that did do pretty good last week, Terry McLaurin, scored 30.3 points. That was against Atlanta, however. New Orleans, though, not looking the best. So we'll see if Scary Terry can keep tearing it up out there. Scary. Moving us on to Derek's key players. First up, we've got Myles Gaskin, only scoring 0.3 points last week. That's just 0.3. So not very good for Myles. We'll see how well he can do this upcoming week against a tough run-stopping Tampa Bay defense. So not looking super great for Myles on this game. Speaking of guys not looking super great, we got Brandon Cooks, who did over the first 3 weeks pretty solid. However, 9.7 last week against Buffalo, not the best. And he's got New England this week, who did actually pretty good against Tampa Bay this past week. So we'll see how well Brandon Cooks can do. For this matchup, I picked my winner as Fiala, and that is my lock pick for the week. Moving us on to my personal most anticipated matchup for the week, we've got State Farm versus Abby. Oh boy, oh boy. Key players for State Farm, we've got first up Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who after the first 2 weeks of being subpar, the last couple weeks, he's been doing pretty good. Going up against Buffalo this week, who does have probably the toughest defense he's faced this season. Maybe not Cleveland, but, Buffalo's pretty good. It's probably going to be a high-scoring matchup, that one, with the offenses as we know them to be. So we'll see if Clyde can get involved and get a solid fantasy day. Moving us on to State's second key player, newly acquired Dalton Schultz, who has been really good the last 2 weeks, scoring 26 points and 17.8 points. Going up against the Giants this upcoming week, a divisional opponent. I'm sure they're going to want to stick it to him, and I'm sure they'll do that through the air because Dak Prescott is pretty solid at playing quarterback. So we'll see if Dalton Schultz can keep this good train rolling. Speaking of trains, we've got Aaron Jones. I don't know. That was a bad segue. Aaron Jones for Abby. Week 2 was definitely his best, scoring 41.5 points, but since then he's only scored 16.6 and 9.9. He's got Cincinnati, who is actually surprisingly solid team. I'm not sure about their defense, but I'm sure it'd be somewhat of a firefight in that matchup. Hopefully not too much so. But Aaron Jones, hopefully he can get a solid bounce-back performance for you. Moving us on to Abby's second key player, we've got Deebo Samuel. He just stuck the dagger right in my heart last week with that long touchdown. Scoring 35.7 points last week. He's the number 3 wide receiver on the season. And I think you also have the number 1. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy, Abby. You have the two of the top 3 receivers on the season. Anyway, Deebo Samuel did pretty good last week against Seattle. We'll see how well he can do this week on the road against Arizona, a bit of a tougher opponent. They are undefeated, so for this matchup, I picked Abby to win. Woo! Moving us on to Lincoln versus Bruce. First up for Bruce, key players, we've got Chris Carson last week. He did not do super great, only scoring 4.1 points on the week against San Francisco, and he's going up against a arguably more tough defense in the LA Rams. They're definitely going to need him probably to do some good stuff in that matchup if they want to win, so we'll see if he can get himself more involved. Moving us on to Bruce's second key player, we've got Damian Harris. After a pretty decent week 1 and 2, not so much for weeks 3 and 4, but he does get the gift of going up against Houston this week, who we all know is bad. So we'll see if he can turn things around and give you a solid fantasy performance. Moving us on to Lincoln's key players. First up, Joseph Mixon, my namesake. Just kidding. He's actually just a year older than me, so that wouldn't really make sense. Joe Mixon, though, he's been doing really well on the season so far. Last week scoring 13.7, so that's pretty solid. Going up against the Packers, who are not the greatest at stopping the run. However, he is hurt. So he's currently listed as day-to-day with an ankle injury. So we'll see how if Joe Mixon can come and play against the Packers this week, and see how well he can do, potentially being hobbled up. Moving us on to Lincoln's second key player, we've got Michael Gesicki. After that not super great week 1 of scoring 0 points, he has been improving. Took a dip a little bit from week 3 to 4, but he'll probably do pretty good this week against Tampa Bay with how good their run defense is. Their passing defense is not the best, so we'll see if Michael Gesicki can perform well. In this matchup, I picked my winner as Bruce. Alright, now we move on to Collin versus Adam. Key players for Collin, we've got first up Darrell Henderson. After missing a week due to injury, he did come back and score a pretty decent amount of fantasy points, 16.6. And he's got Seattle this week. We'll see how well Darrell can do. So that's first up for Bruce. Second key player for Collin. Second key player for Collin is Marvin Jones. Not super great last week, despite DJ Chark getting injured and out for the season. Goes up against Tennessee, who has not been that great on defense. So we'll see if Marvin can bounce back and get yourself a solid fantasy performance. Moving us on to Adam's key players. First up, we've got Chuba Hubbard. I know it's Chuba Hubbard, but Chuba Hubbard. You know, we were expecting something like Mike Davis last year, but only got 9.1 points last week. Going up against Philly this week, so see if he can bounce back and perform, you know, as they're hoping for him to perform. Moving us on to Adam's second key player, Cordero Patterson. You know, he's just been good this season so far. Currently the number 3 running back on the season. I wonder what he is wide receiver, because he's also listed as a receiver. But number 3 running back goes up against the Jets this week, who just had their first win. So they're probably eager for another, and the Atlanta Falcons aren't that great. But Cordero Patterson is pretty good, so we'll see if Cordero can perform again just as you hope. My winner for this matchup, I picked Collin. Moving us on to the final matchup of the week. We've got Sam versus Brian. First up for Sam, we've got Tyler Lockett. First 2 weeks, he was on fire. Last couple weeks, not so much. Goes up against a divisional opponent this week in the LA Rams. So we'll see if Tyler Lockett can bounce back and perform like he did the first 2 weeks. Moving us on to the second key player for Sam, we've got tight end Logan Thomas. He is currently injured with a hamstring injury, so he may not play this upcoming week. If that is the case, you would have to either pivot to, who else you got? You got Hunter Henry, so not super great. Otherwise, pick up a free agent tight end. But right now, he is in your lineup, so we'll see if he can play. And if he does, how well he will do. Moving us on to Brian's key players. First up, we've got Allen Robinson, who has been nothing but a disappointment this week. The most points he's scored is 10.4 against Cincinnati in week 2. Goes up against the Raiders this week, who is a pretty solid defense. So we'll see how well Allen can do. Second key player, I said, is just your flex position, because you currently have Julio Jones there, who I believe you had last week, who obviously did not play. Not sure if Julio will come back this upcoming week, but if he doesn't, then your options are kind of slim on your bench. Peyton Barber, who got injured last night. As of this recording, and then you got Trey Sermon, who could play. It seems like he will. And then there's Will Fuller, who's out, and Tyler Conklin. You know, I'd probably go Trey Sermon, because Julio probably is not going to play. But, yeah, that's just me. Despite all that, for this matchup, I picked my winner as Brian, and I have him as my upset pick for the week. So, yeah, that is this week's Mishpo. Yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed. And with that, thank you, and thank you. All right, I think I'm going to go with Brian for this week. So, Brian. Oh, it felt like it was going to land, but it did not. Right, Lily?